I was 12 years old and we had to give this speech in front of the class every month, and I absolutely hated it. I was petrified, clammy hands and palpitating heart. And at one stage after doing 5 of these, I thought, there's got to be a better way. There must be a way to get over this disabling fear. And some part of my mind went, hang on. The reason that you're hating this experience is your anticipation of what's going to occur. Well, what if you flip it around? And so I did, and so I started to believe that it was going to be a great experience and to see myself. I know I'd never found out about visualization or anything, but I started to see myself giving that talk before I had and people loving it. And simply through that act, I found that that's exactly what occurred. And within 18 months, I won the school speech competition. Now, that insight was not so much in how to give talks or how to present or how to pitch, which is part of what I help people to do. It was actually an insight in how my potential was way more than what I thought it was. And I thought, wow, if that was true for something as simple as giving a talk, I wonder what else this might apply to. And I wonder how many people out there have a belief about the potential which is way lower than its actuality. And so out of that, I came to believe that everyone has a potential way higher than where they see themselves. And so today, the people whose potential I care about most of all are entrepreneurs. I believe that everyone has a superpower, and I believe that mine comes in 2 parts. The first part is about seeing in a technology entrepreneur, what is it that needs to shift in that person so they get to create that company that changes the world, that becomes that billion-dollar company. And the second part is the ability to walk with that person so that they get to go on the straight and narrow path to achieve that goal. So here's the one thing I see happen all the time. Entrepreneurs who believe that to be successful, they've got to do all this stuff, and it's a lie. And I realized it was a lie because after I ran my first high-tech company, I wrote down the stuff that made us successful, and it took 1 sheet of paper. And there were 7 things. And apart from building the product, the other 6 were all about doing 2 things real well. Having the right conversations and identifying the right people to have those conversations with. That was it. And the problem I see is that most people are not allowing themselves to embrace the simplicity of that idea. And so just like me, they go and complex things up massively and do a whole lot of stuff that is actually tangential or of incremental importance only to the growth of themselves and their company. And so I saw that if we could master these things, if we could hone in on these 2 things, identifying the right people to have conversations with, taking those bold moves, and then preparing for these key conversations with an investor, with a new board member, prospective customer, prospective supply chain partnership agreement, prospective new rock star employee. If we could really have excellent conversations more of the time, that would grow the company. And that's about how we prepare. And I don't mean just preparing the message or preparing the slides or whatever you're going to do. I mean preparing yourself. Because we all know that what you say is such a small fraction of what actually gets people galvanized to take that next action you would like them to take. So I worked out, how do we prepare the person, the entrepreneur, so that they have maximum chance in that moment, in that conversation that could make or break the company, and they're happening all the time. If we can maximize the chance of that going in the right direction for both parties, then we have a formula for actually being able to grow companies again and again and again. And that comes down to preparation, just like a sports person does. And it turns out the best sort of preparation is actually to over-prepare. Prepare in a way which is harder than game day will be. And what does that look like? Well, that's a question I ask myself, and that's the work that I do with entrepreneurs. There's a huge amount of preparation. So here's a very concrete example of how I would help an entrepreneur to prepare. So a guy called Ollie, he's been for 10 years trying to get people to listen to him He's got this innovation which could change the world. It's a new form of transportation that can revolutionize the way that urban cities do transportation. Carbon neutral, genius. And there's only one problem. No one's listening to him. Everyone thinks it's too good to be true. And when we honed down to what was creating this problem, we realized there was actually only two things. The first was Ollie had a big chip on his shoulder because no one had heard him for 10 years. Every person he talked to, he treated them like they were an idiot for not getting him. And the second problem was he really didn't have an idea of how to turn information into a story. So the preparation that we did together prepared him for the environment in a way which is tougher than what he'd have to go to face. And I gave it to him. I laid it straight about where I saw his mindset being at and where he needed to shift to. And that was tough for him to hear, but he stepped up and he heard it and he took it on board. And the second thing we did is we practiced and we rehearsed that story until it was tight. And the outcome of those two tweaks we made was that within 40 hours of a visiting emissary of the Indian government hearing his pitch, he was flown on a plane to New Delhi to meet India's transport minister. Can you imagine? That never happens. That was in the strength of two things: shift in mindset, shift in story. And then on the basis of that pitch, he gave it again. And then within 3 days, there was a newspaper article announcing the Indian government was going to get behind his technology, even though it was unproven, even though there were 3 other people who had productionized systems. And they said, this is the one we're putting our money in. And that was because he made 2 shifts. Stepped up in his mindset, stepped up in his story. Preparation makes the result almost inevitable. Muhammad Ali once said that by the time he had stepped into the ring, the outcome was almost assured by the preparation that he'd done beforehand. And in business, it's the same. There's 2 things you're doing. You're stepping into the ring, and the rest of the time should be preparation to step into the ring. And I believe that if we over-train to step into those rings, we can elevate our performance even further. And why is that important? Well, your messages that are going to shape the trajectory of your business is influenced by the energy in your body. So your body must be highly energized to deliver a powerful message. And some examples of what I do: recently putting on a 40-pound, 20 kg weight belt and an altitude mask to simulate being at 9,000 feet. Why? Because by the time I take those things off, I feel like I'm flying. I'm energized. And that's the state you want to be stepping into the ring in business in. But there's another reason. We take that same concept and you apply it to how you might step into the ring of pitching to an investor or an important customer or a key person you want to join your team. Over-prepare. And we would put them in Dragon's Den scenarios, so by the time they walk into that ring, again, they feel like they're flying. They feel like they've already been there before because they've nailed it. So if this doesn't change, then New Zealand gets to be this country where if you're a sporting superstar, you get to realize your potential, but if you're everyone else, then you don't. Because right now, we only invest in people, we only train them to reach that global stage if they're sporting stars. We do not do that if, for example, they're entrepreneurs. And so what that means is that if I, as someone who's probably never going to be an All Black, want to achieve my global potential, it's unlikely to happen. And I have to live vicariously through the performance of my sporting national team in order to feel okay as a New Zealander. And that vicarious living is a form of death in disguise. And I believe in a different New Zealand where everyone in our nation gets to achieve their potential no matter where they come from. And that includes our high-tech entrepreneurs. I believe that they deserve the same standard of training, the same standard of preparation, the same standard of success that the All Blacks do. In fact, more than that the answers are right underneath our noses, because all we need to do is transplant that same excellence that the All Blacks have exerted through their training and take that approach to our high-tech entrepreneurs. And when that occurs, we will see a New Zealand that truly becomes a multifaceted, successful nation, who raises her GDP on the back of raising her GDC. That's our gross domestic confidence. Because in doing this, we will have shifted the self-esteem of our nation. And we will have sent a powerful message that we can punch above our weight, not only on the sporting stage, but on the economic stage. Not only if you're an All Black, but if you're a high-tech entrepreneur. And that is a New Zealand that I want to be part of.